Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, we'll talk about Dave Roberts' comments on his pitching decisions, the wacky start time for today's Game 3, and the Dodgers' path to victory in this series. Plenty of Dodgers talk to get to, so let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Dodger fans. I am Jeff Snider of Baseball Essential, and this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm flying solo today, but Vince should be back with me tomorrow. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every day. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. We especially want to welcome anybody who's listening or watching for the first time. Hope you enjoy it, and I hope you come back tomorrow. This is the daily podcast covering the world champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. So as I said, we got plenty of Dodger talk to get to today. No game yesterday, so no game specifically to talk about, but plenty of stuff from the series. Some comments from Dave Roberts after we had recorded yesterday's episode about his pitching decisions, which we did spend some time on yesterday. So going to talk about that. First, I want to talk about this crazy start time to Game 3. You would think, and I did think before they announced the start times, I thought, okay, we have the NLCS going on in Los Angeles on the West Coast, and we have the ALCS going on in Boston, which is the East Coast. It makes sense for the East Coast game to start first and then the West Coast game to go after. Do each game at 5 or 6 o'clock local time, 3 hours time difference between the cities, and boom, everybody's happy. Well, because maybe that made too much sense to Rob Manfred, who is somewhat opposed to logic and critical thinking sometimes. Hashtag Jeff for commissioner. Instead, the Dodgers play at 2 o'clock p.m. in Game 3 today. By the time you're listening to this, the game's about to start. So hurry up and finish this. But, don't skip it for the game. Just start earlier. But yeah, the game starts in the afternoon, which means harder for fans to get to because they have to take a day off work and or school to get there. Obviously, it means everybody leaving the game is going to be driving home from the game in rush hour traffic afterwards. A lot of silliness about this. And so I've been racking my brain trying to figure out why would they put the Dodgers in the 2 p.m. game. My kind of defining mantra in life, I try not to jump straight to the person who made this decision is an idiot. We'll talk more about that when I get to Dave Roberts stuff in the next segment. I always try to give the benefit of the doubt. And if somebody makes a decision I don't understand, my instinct is to try to understand it. It doesn't always work. But usually I can at least get to the point where, okay, I understand why this decision was made, even if I don't still agree with it. And that's, there's going to be a lot of that in the Dave Roberts segment. I can often understand why decisions are made, even if I don't agree with them. And so I thought, okay, maybe even Rob Manfred isn't a total idiot. He has a long history of doing things that I think are dumb and short-sighted. And so maybe there's a little bit of bias there on my part. And so I wanted to try to understand. And one thing that I can get to is the Dodgers are playing the Braves. The Braves are an Eastern time zone team, and their fans are going to want to watch the game on TV. So if the game didn't start until 5 o'clock Pacific or even 6 o'clock Pacific, which might be better, that's 8 or 9 o'clock in Atlanta. And so it's harder for, those kids who have school the next day, can't stay up that late. And I'm very familiar with kids not being able to stay up and watch games. I live in the mountain time zone. So all during the regular season, Dodger games don't start till 8 o'clock for me. And so my kids are going to bed by the fourth inning. And so it is kind of a bummer. Their experience with the Dodgers is they watch the recaps in the morning most of the time and see what happened. And so I get that with the postseason, but the Red Sox start at 5 o'clock Pacific tomorrow or today, which is 8 o'clock in Boston. And not only is that the same time for an East Coast team. And so Red Sox fans ran into the same issue. It's also the time where the game is being played. Playing a game that doesn't even start in the stadium where it's at until 8 p.m. just seems silly to me. And they do have the Dodgers playing the late games the next couple days. One day, yeah, they're at 6 or 5:08 p.m. on both Wednesday and Thursday. And on Wednesday, when the ALCS will be in Game 5, they are starting at 2:08 p.m. Pacific time, which is 5:08. That just seems to make more sense to me. And maybe it just boiled down to we want to split up. There's the two games that or the 2 days that the ALCS and NLCS are going up against each other here in this little chunk of games. And so we'll split the difference. One time Atlanta kids have to stay up late. The other day, Boston kids have to stay up late. I guess, really what it boils down to for me is I hope that it works out to the Dodgers' advantage. Maybe the ball will fly a little bit more. The Dodgers have been hitting the balls hard and not getting out. Of course, the ball flying more could work against them because the Braves have some pretty good hitters. I'm hoping that Walker Buehler can come out and shove in a day game and with his extra day of rest and that the Dodgers can get to Charlie Morton and maybe the day game helps them. Who knows? The weather, I wouldn't be surprised if we look back at the game and think, oh yeah, the weather did help one team or the other. I just don't know that we can accurately predict which team that's going to be. But it really, I think this boils down to a decision for the fans watching at home and not wanting to be unfair to the Atlanta fans, I guess, and give them the late games all 3 games. Uh, the Braves already get home field advantage in a series when they barely won more games than my dead grandma did this year. And so I don't know that I care that much about being fair to their fans. Also, Braves fans are among my least favorite subset of the human population. No offense to them, other than that I hate them. And, I mean offense towards them, other than my best friend who is a Braves fan, but he comes by it naturally, not front runnerly like most of them. So anyway, that's a diversion. But yeah, I don't care if Braves fans are happy. And so maybe that makes it harder for me to accept. But I do think that's probably the logic behind this. And so it definitely is one of those cases where I can see the reasoning, even though I don't agree with it because I think it's silly. I think when you got a game on the East Coast and a game on the West Coast, you start them both at about 5:00 local time, and everybody's reasonably happy. But hashtag Jeff for commissioner. Maybe someday when I am the commissioner of baseball, those decisions will be made more betterly. I think that's the proper English way of saying that. But for now, Fred Robman is the commissioner, and he is not as good at it as I would be. And so that's what we're stuck with. So we have a day game today in Los Angeles, 2 p.m. Pacific time. And hopefully Dodgers are going to come out and knock it around. In the third segment today, I'm going to talk about the Dodgers' path to victory in this series, and that all starts today. But first, when I come back, I'm going to talk about Dave Roberts' comments on his pitching decisions. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every day. Please keep doing that. And like I said, if this is your first time listening or watching, thank you for being here. I hope you'll come back tomorrow because we're doing this 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking Dodgers with you. It's usually me and Vince both, but right now it's just me. So I'll be back in just a second to talk about Dave Roberts. So keep it locked on Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for you to go to your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. There's no way they can do it. So why would you go to the auto parts store in the first place when what you're going to find is either a generic part that's not exactly what you need, or they're going to have to order in a part for you? Guess what? You can do that yourself from the comfort of your own home without putting on pants. I think the auto parts store wants you to put on pants. Rock Auto, they don't have that pants policy. They don't care if you wear pants. They're not saying you can't wear pants. You totally can, but you don't have to. And so all you got to do is sit down at your computer or on your phone and go to Rock Auto, and you put in you find your make and model of car, and they'll show you a list of all the parts that are available for your car. They're going to have what you need. And if you look really closely, you're going to notice, wow, this is a lot less expensive than the auto parts store too. It's the best of both worlds. No pants and less money. Win-win. There's probably more wins. Go to rockauto.com because it is the way to get your auto parts for, 50% less sometimes, a lot less money and much more convenient. So go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck and write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, I'm back. I want to talk a little bit about Dave Roberts' comments about his pitching decisions, because there's a lot of, I, I, people who've listened to this show for a long time will understand that I agree with most of the words that Dave Roberts said, uh, as far as the reasoning behind it, even if I don't necessarily agree with the conclusions that he drew. And one thing that really, I'll kind of kick off with this. This is from an article on The Athletic by Fabian Ardaya. Fabian's great. If you're not following him on Twitter, you should. If you're not subscribed to The Athletic, they have a lot of good stuff. Fabian does a lot of good work over there. And what Dave Roberts said, he said, talking about the decisions to, have Max Scherzer pitch out of relief, have Julio Urias pitch out of relief. He said, just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. A decision that doesn't work out doesn't mean it's the wrong decision. So I do know that everyone in that clubhouse believes that we're going about it the right way and no one is compromised. I think for us, that's the most important thing. You guys know, if you've listened to me before, I totally agree with that sentence. A decision that doesn't work out doesn't mean it's the wrong decision. I don't think there are very many right and wrong decisions that a manager makes. I think most of the time I call them 55-45 decisions. Some of you might be tired of hearing me say that phrase, but if you haven't heard it before, I'll explain it really quickly. I think most decisions a manager makes, it's like, okay, if I do it this way, we have a 55% chance of success. If I do it this way, it's a 45% chance. The job of a manager is to pick the 55 more often. It's not always 55-45. Sometimes there's decisions that are 70-30. I think there are very few decisions that are 100-0 or even 90-10. I think most of them, fall in the somewhere between 50-50 and 70-30 range. And so even a 60-40 decision where it's clearly there's a quote unquote right answer, which is the 60%, 40% of the time, that one isn't going to work out. Sometimes there's a situation where it doesn't matter who you bring in, you're going to win the game. Sometimes it doesn't matter who you bring in, you're going to lose the game. Those things happen. Sometimes you make the right move and it doesn't work. I think that might have been the case in the ninth inning with bringing in Kenley Jansen. I think bringing in Kenley to face what's his name, Rosario, was probably the right move. Kenley didn't make a good pitch and he only got one pitch and Rosario put the bat on it, but in that situation where Gratterall doesn't miss bats and Kenley has been missing bats, I think it was probably the right move. It did not work, but I think that's probably a 55-45 decision that Roberts went with the 55. And unfortunately, it was one of the 45% of the time that it didn't work. So I agree with what Dave Roberts is saying as far as the mindset and the overall philosophy. Where I don't necessarily agree still is, he says everybody in the clubhouse has bought into the idea of Max Scherzer pitching in Game 5 of the NLDS. Roberts said if Scherzer doesn't pitch in that game, we might not even be here. He said if we didn't go with Max, we might not be having this conversation right now. So I think that there's certainly a cost. Absolutely. I don't think us using Max in Game 5 is a reason we're down 2-0 right now in this series. We plan on a bullpen game, either Game 4 or Game 5 of this series. So I don't think using Julio in Game 2, 1 or 2, changed that. So I don't see the cost. We had to get to a point where we were at to win that game and to get to this point and sort of figure it out. Things just can't be scripted. You got to sometimes go off script to what we feel. What I feel is the best chance to win a game, let alone a particular series. For me, what it boils down to is I don't think it was necessary to use Max Scherzer in Game 5 of the NLDS. And I think I think that is having ramifications, because if they didn't use Scherzer there, Scherzer probably pitches Game 1 of this series and his arm isn't dead and blah, 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 blah. Who knows what it would be. Maybe they'd still be down 0-2, but it definitely compromised them. And I feel like seeing that, and like I said on yesterday's episode, when we're already seeing the ramifications of having used Max Scherzer in relief, why do they then go straight to using Julio in relief in, again, a situation where it's not strictly necessary? And basically, I think there's exceptions to every rule, but my general rule is in the postseason, a guy who is currently in the postseason rotation should not be used in relief except in an emergency. Game 5 of the 2016 NLDS was an emergency when Clayton Kershaw came in because Kenley Jansen had already thrown 50-something pitches, thrown over 2 innings. He was gassed, and they needed somebody to get them through. But the difference between that 2016 team and this team in 2021 is that this team has a very good bullpen. And yesterday you had relievers who weren't used at all. You had relievers who were used in different situations. And so for me, it seemed like they had made up their mind before the game that they were going to use Julio to get Freddie Freeman out that last time through the order. And they played everything off that. So they went with Blake Trinan in the 7th inning against the bottom of the order, which to me, it's like using Blake Trinan against the bottom of the order is not a complete waste of Blake Trinan, but a little bit of a waste of Blake Trinan. He is maybe your best reliever, definitely one of your best relievers. For me, that is Brusdar Graterol time. When you're at the bottom of the order in the 7th inning, go with Brusdar Graterol. They went with Trinan, though, because they knew they didn't need Trinan in the 8th inning because they were going with Julio to get Freddie Freeman out. Well, Blake Trinan got Freddie Freeman out the day before. Yeah, facing him 2 days in a row, maybe it doesn't go as well. But if you take out the possibility of Julio, which is what I would have voted to do, then yeah, Blake Trinan makes the most sense for the 8th inning. And then you just go Graterol 7th, Trinan 8th, Kenley 9th, boom, boom, boom. And, like I said, just because Julio gave up runs, that doesn't mean it was the wrong decision. That's not why I think it was the wrong decision. My concern about Julio, even if it had worked, I would have the same concern. Just like after Max Scherzer pitched in Game 5, I still said, I don't think it was necessary. I felt good when Max Scherzer came out of the bullpen because, yeah, he's very, very good, and he got the job done. He finished the game. He won the series, but I don't think that they needed him to do that, and I was worried about the future ramifications. I'm in that same boat now where I'm worried about what Julio pitching in relief, especially because he ended up throwing more pitches than they probably expected him to, what that means for him in his next start. I wouldn't be surprised. Chances are maybe they go with the bullpen game tomorrow in Game 4 instead of in Game 5 and push Julio back to Game 5 to give him an extra day of rest there. And, like Robert said, we were going to do a bullpen game in one of those days anyway, so it doesn't really matter if it's Game 4 or Game 5. That's all technically true. But when you're down 2-0, Game 4 is going to be a pivotal game, assuming the Dodgers win today in Game 3. And I know that's assumption, but I'm not going to start with the assumption that they're going to lose and be down 3-0. But assuming the Dodgers win, they're down 2-1. Well, then Game 4, if they win that, now it's down to a best-of-3 series. And you know that you have Scherzer and Buehler pitching 2 of those games. And, so Game 4 becomes really pivotal. Now, if they can win a bullpen game in Game 4, tie up the series anyway, and then we just need to win 2 out of 3, and we have our 3 guys who are going to get Cy Young votes this year. That's a good situation. I may be bleeding into my next segment where I do talk about the Dodgers' path to victory, so I won't go too far there. But, my concern with Julio pitching was about the ramifications for the rest of the series, not the game. I expected Julio to be successful in the 8th inning. The fact that he wasn't is not a factor in me not liking the decision at the time and not liking it after the fact. I am worried about the rest of the series. And so, that's where we're at. So again, I think it is way too common. Too many people jump straight to Dave Roberts as an idiot when he makes a decision they disagree with. And I do think that it is a healthy mindset, a good mindset to, and patting myself on the back, I guess, although I'm not super flexible, but, I do think if more people thought the way I do, when you hear, when somebody makes a decision you disagree with, if your instinct is, I wonder why he made that decision instead of he's an idiot, I think we'd all be happier. But this is definitely a case of where I can see why a decision was made, even though I still, in the end, disagree with it. I still don't like using starting pitchers in relief when they are being counted on in the same series to start games. I don't like it, especially with a bullpen like the Dodgers have. They have a very good bullpen. There's built-in days off in the series, et cetera, et cetera. I think they should be relying on their relievers to be relievers and, relying on their starters to be starters. That's basically what it boils down to. But I do get Dave Roberts' reasoning, and I agree with the philosophy behind it, even if I don't necessarily agree with the implementation. So, in a minute, I'm going to come back. I'm going to talk about the Dodgers' path to victory in this series. Being down 0-2 is obviously not ideal. It would have been really nice to come home tied 1-1, but I do believe there's still a path to victory. Vince and I talk a lot about that path to victory. And, last year in the NLCS and this year in the NLDS, both times the path to victory that we laid out basically came to pass. So maybe I'm trying to speak it into existence again. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. I'll be back in a minute to talk about the path to victory. So keep it locked on Dodgers. Football's back and better than ever, and so is BetOnline.ag, a new web interface for the start of the basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, baseball postseason, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, final segment here. First, I do want to thank you again for making us your first listen every day. Encourage you, if you're not listening every day, add 1 or 2 days a month to your rotation. If this is your first time listening or watching, thanks for being here. Hope you'll come back. I want to talk about the Dodgers' path to victory in this series. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It's not a good situation to be in. The Dodgers are down 2-0. And here's basically what it boils down to for me. I believe the Dodgers are the better team. I believe, over the course of 162 games, the Dodgers finished 18 games better than the Braves. Were they actually 18 games better? I think they probably were. I think you can make a case that the Dodgers even underperformed a little bit, and the Braves, yeah, they were better at the end. So maybe by the end of the season, they were playing more like a 91 win team than an 88 win team. But the Dodgers, probably were actually a 109, 110 win team. And especially when you factor in the injuries, not having Max Muncy right now kind of negates some of that. Obviously, not having Kershaw, Dustin May, so some of those injuries are still impacting the Dodgers. But overall, I think about a 15 to 20 game difference in talent between these teams over the course of 162 games. The problem is in baseball, even the bad teams win, 50, 60 games a season. Like the really bad teams still win once in a while. And I think the Dodgers are going to be favored in each individual game going forward in this series. Game 3 today, the Dodgers should win. Game 4 tomorrow, the Dodgers should win. Game 5, the Dodgers should win, on and on. Each individual game, they should win. The question is, in the game of baseball, where the team that should win doesn't always win, can the Dodgers win 4 of those next 5 games that they should win? And that's the question. But the key, I think, and I'm sure Dave Roberts is preaching this to his team. I'm sure the team leaders, Justin Turner has been in this situation before. It was his text message, his group text last year that kind of, rallied the troops when the Dodgers were down 3-1 against the Braves. Max Scherzer has been here before. He's won a World Series. Albert Pujols won a World Series. There are guys who they have plenty of veteran leadership in this locker room to, even without Dave Roberts, who is definitely a good players manager. So this message is getting there to them that they just need to take it one game at a time. Because if you win today, you got Walker Buehler on the mound. Yeah, Charlie Morton's a tough pitcher. Walker Buehler is a better pitcher than Charlie Morton. The Dodgers are a better hitting team than the Braves when they're hitting well. So the key today is beat Charlie Morton, let Walker Buehler dominate, win this game. If you win today, now it's 2-1. Boom. And then do it again tomorrow. Tomorrow, whether it's a bullpen game or Julio pitching, we know it's going to be probably a bullpen game for the Braves. Hopefully that means good things for the Dodgers offense. The Dodgers have seen a lot of the Braves bullpen already in this series. And so maybe that advantage starts to go to them a little bit there. And so, same thing could be said for the Braves, seeing a lot of the Dodgers bullpen. But you take it one day at a time, you win game 4. If you win games 3 and 4, then suddenly, like I started to say in the last segment, it's now a best of 3 series. And you've got at least Walker Buehler and Max Scherzer going in 2 of those 3 games, and maybe Julio in one of them too, if the Dodgers do go with a bullpen game in game 4. And so then you're at a point, we just need to win 2 out of 3. And we've got the 3 guys, our 3 top starters who are all going to get Cy Young votes this year. We've got them going. That is suddenly a great situation to be in. And at that point, the Dodgers are favored to win the series. So if you look at what are the chances of them winning 4 of the next 5 games, it's a little bit daunting. But if you look at what are the chances to win the game today? Well, they're favored today. Go out there, take care of business today, hit Charlie Morton today, Walker Buehler dominate today, and then we'll worry about tomorrow. And then when tomorrow becomes today, boom, let's win this bullpen game today. Let's hit the ball. Boom. Now it's a 2 out of 3 series. And game 5, hey, we got a home game and we've got Julio on the mound. Let's win this game today. And then you go back to Atlanta up 3-2. And it's like, okay, we just need to win one of the next 2. Remember the World Series last year. It's like the Dodgers, after they won game 5, it was, okay, we just need to win one of these last 2 games. And we know worst case scenario, we have Walker Buehler going in game 7. And guess what happened? They never got to Walker Buehler in game 7 because they won game 6. And that's all you need to do is one game at a time. And I know it sounds cliche. Well, there's a reason cliches exist. Cliches are things that have become so common that they become almost meaningless. We say them without thinking about what they mean. But the reason they're so common is because they're so true. And take it one game at a time is the most cliche and most true thing in professional sports. And that's the key to the Dodgers in this series. That's their path to victory is win today. And if you win today 4 times in the next 6 days, counting the off day, you will win the series and you'll head to the World Series. If you start thinking, okay, we've got to win 4 of the next 5 games, that's not win today. Win today, worry about tomorrow when tomorrow becomes today. And that, like I said, the Dodgers are the better team. They're not favored in this series at this point. If they win today, game 3, then you start to think, okay, it's probably back to about 50-50. If they win game 4, Dodgers are absolutely favored after that point. And so you just got to put yourself in those best positions. Obviously, the big key, the pitching needs to keep dominating. The pitching is pitched really, really well in the postseason, even with some little hiccups with the bullpen. The pitching has done its job. The offense needs to step up, and hopefully a day game at Dodger Stadium gets that jump started. And, last year when the Dodgers were down 2-0 to the Braves, the Dodgers scored 11 runs in the first inning. I would love to see that. I don't know that that's likely, but, a good offensive performance today and not fluky, but just start cashing in on those guys who have been on base. They've had a lot of base runners they've left on. And for me, that's a positive thing. Not positive that they've left them on base, but positive that it's not like they're struggling to get guys on base. They're just not cashing in, and they just need some of those clutch hits. And so, we mentioned yesterday, the Turner brothers need to step it up. Everybody kind of needs to step up. I like a lot of the matchups that Charlie Morton, faces. I like the Dodgers offense in this game. And so hopefully they can just win today and kind of put the fear, remind the Braves, oh yeah, the Dodgers are the best team in baseball this year. And this is why. So that's where we're at. That's the path to victory. And it's not easy, but it is simple, if that makes sense. So hopefully that's what the Dodgers can do. I think that's going to wrap it up for me today. Thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every day. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about game 3, and hopefully it's going to be a happy podcast. Hopefully we'll be talking about win today and a good offensive performance. We'll talk about, some of these guys breaking out of their slumps and the Dodgers cashing in on runners in scoring position opportunities and all those things. So be sure tomorrow morning also to make Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. And now for your second listen, why don't you go check out Locked On MLB, where Paul Francis Sullivan, please call him Sully, brings you his unique perspective on the major leagues past and present. It's free and available on all platforms. If you're not listening to Locked On Dodgers every day, I would love it if you did. You can get us anywhere you get podcasts. You can check us out on YouTube, all those places that you want to watch or listen to a podcast. We are available. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. You can follow Vince on Twitter at Vince Samperio. You can follow me at Snidog. The DMs are open in all of those places. You can send us an email anytime you want at lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or you can send us a voicemail or a text at 323-863-LOCK 5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.